until relatively recently, I mean the last couple of years, I was blissfully unaware of something called a labor peace agreement. But these are, of course, for our friends in Michigan labor. They're out there for those who employ businesses. They're dealing with them and now being taken up by the state legislature as well. And the controversy over this, the most recent one has to do with marijuana. And I've looked into California. And now listen, this is out from a law firm in California. This is from the Stratton firm. And they say, are you thinking about operating a cannabis business in California? You may be surprised to learn you might need to enter into a legally binding labor peace agreement with a union just to get a license to operate. Well, wait a minute, that's California, not Michigan? Not necessarily. Tony Daunt's here, Michigan Freedom Fund. They're pushing back on this, and they did so yesterday. I'm sure they will again. Morning, Tony. Welcome back.
Good morning, Dave. Thanks for having me.
All right, so you're not, so this, knowing about California, where they are in the process here, this doesn't surprise you hearing that in other states they've just kind of laid it right out there, and it was starting to trend that way in Michigan too. Is there anything to stop that tide right now from your standpoint?
Well, I think that Senator Nesbitt,
Eric Nesbitt
has done a really good job shedding light on this, and he put forward a resolution, basically signifying to the administration, to the Whitmer administration, look, this isn't acceptable. You need to put a stop to this. And we applaud him for that. We applaud the Republicans who voted for it and supported it. Unfortunately, every Democrat voted against it because apparently they would rather, do the bidding of the groups that fund their campaigns than help job creators and employers. Because, really what this amounts to is, the mob movies where the guys come in and they say, really nice business you got going on here. It'd be a real shame if something happened to it. And so, of course, the business owner thinks, well, I guess I better sign up for these guys for some protection. And it's an absurd way to run a business, and it's really brazen that the administration would put something like this out there and expect job creators, business owners, people looking to get licensed in this industry would just lay down and take it.
Well, you called it a racket, right? That's strong.
Absolutely a racket.
All right. Now, this is Senate Continuing Resolution 18, and this doesn't have, this is sort of, this is more like a shot across the bow, isn't it?
Absolutely. With a concurrent resolution like this, there's no binding, there's no legislation behind it that can make something happen. What it really is laying out the case that, look, there are some pretty solid legal reasoning out there and legal briefs out there that say you can't do this. And what they're going to do if they move forward is trigger lawsuits. It's going to have to go to court. It's going to cost job creators money. It's going to cost the state money, and ultimately they're likely to lose. All this in the face of the fact that Michigan is a right-to-work state, and I think this flies directly in the spirit, in the face of right-to-work law. You're basically saying,
but it doesn't mean though. But Tony, I'm not trying to overly cut you off here. But let's say what it doesn't mean though. It doesn't mean that marijuana workers in the marijuana industry can't organize if they want to, right?
Correct. What it's saying is that you, in order to even get a license, you have to have an agreement with a labor union that there will be basically peaceful operation of your business. Okay. And again, to me, that screams racket. If you don't have an agreement, well, there's going to be harassment, and that is a mid-19th century, mid-20th century kind of mindset. And we are a right-to-work state. You shouldn't have to engage in discussions with any group. Just as they shouldn't have to have a labor peace agreement, they shouldn't have to sign on with the National Federation of Independent Business or the Small Business Association or join the local chamber. They should be able to operate their business as they see fit without interference from anyone, whether it be the state government or outside associations or labor unions. And
do you know of any marijuana? Tony, do you know of it? We're visiting with Tony Daunt today, who heads up the Michigan Freedom Fund, and you can find them online as well. And they're on Twitter, and they do tweet believe me. Tony, do you know? No, it's true. Tony, do you know of any major marijuana businesses, cannabis businesses in the state who've signed on to these and have a labor peace agreement? Is it something that's in the talking about stage? Is it on the books? Is it a rule versus a law? Well, explain to listeners where that stands.
Sure. Good question. As of right now, these labor peace agreements is a proposed rule from the department that handles the regulation and licensing of businesses.
Licensing and Regulatory Affairs, LARA, right.
Yep.
Okay.
And so it's not yet in effect, and that's what the importance of this battle is laying out that this is inappropriate. It should stop. The governor should withdraw these rules and avoid a costly lawsuit. And I know that there are numerous associations related to the cannabis industry that are on board on our side and fighting these rules because they view it as an interference in their ability to do business here in the state of Michigan. And hopefully the Whitmer administration will see the light and withdraw these rules.
When you say avoid a costly lawsuit, is that your shot across the bow? Because you have sued, and you're in the midst of not on this in particular, but on other issues. Would this be one where you would step in, or you see other advocates or other industry advocates?
I certainly, I'd never take anything off the table, but, I see this as something where there are people who are directly involved in the industry would have probably a more likely, effort or ability to.
Well, you see why I'm asking, because you're not a stranger to a courtroom with these particular things. I mean, I just, if it's out there, it's out there. But certainly there's a threat of this, and labor peace agreements are going to get more attention here because, let's face it, the marijuana industry is growing now in our state by leaps and bounds, and some communities are embracing, others are not, but statewide it's legal, and how it proceeds with, like you say, the rules that they promulgate here at the state department level, that will be very interesting, and see if the legislature gets directly involved. This is a Senate concurrent resolution 18. It's rather short. It was passed on a party line with more than a fifth of members voting yay, as determined by the chair. And it passed, but it basically says no to these labor peace agreements, which have been called by the Freedom Fund a racket and a mob-style shakedown scheme. But it sounds like the description of a movie I'm probably watching on a Friday night. Tony Daunt is our guest, Michigan Freedom Fund. I always appreciate you coming on. Thanks, Tony.
You bet. Thanks for having me, Dave.
Absolutely. Interesting stuff, and involving an industry that's growing and relatively new in Michigan. So, hey, you know what? When you got new stuff, you have growing pains, right? And these will be, I don't know if it's painful, but some are clearly bothered by this, and it's part of the back and forth between the I would say ruling, but in majority, Republicans here and the Democrats, at least in the Senate, on a party line vote. 1320 WILS. 1320